Hello, everyone. Jess Stainbrook here with the Invisible Disabilities Association, and we're part of the Love Ideas Summit. And I'm super excited for this segment because I've got a good friend and a special guest, I'll say, Lindsay McCormick. Hi, Lindsay. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. It's
Oh
good
my
to see
goodness.
you.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We get on and we haven't seen each other for a while. Lindsay and I actually met at, one of the Super Bowls a long time ago. I mean, Lindsay is a broadcaster, a journalist, entrepreneur. I mean, you can find her on all these different things. I met her through, she was doing some ESPN stuff at the Super Bowl for some things. But you could see her on, she's one of the judges and an investor in the Entrepreneurs Show, the Elevator Pitch Show. And I want to hear a little bit about that. I mean, we'll talk about a bunch of things today. And I didn't know this, but you're in a feature film now, in a movie, right?
So it came out a few years ago. It's called The Bounce Back. They actually are running it on VH1,
Oh,
BET
funny.
the past few months. I saw it on last week, ironically. And I'll have my dentist come up to me and say, although I haven't been to the dentist in a while, as everybody I think is in the same boat, I saw you on BET last week. So yeah, it was a romantic comedy with Shamar Moore and Bill Bellamy.
Oh, that's so funny. I have to check it out. It's funny because, my movie, it plays all over too. And people just say, hey, I just saw your movie. So yeah, I know the feeling. Like everybody comes up to you like, wasn't that like 10 years ago or
Yeah.
something? So, well, the other thing about Lindsay, I want to tell everybody is she was recently Houston's Chronicle list of Houston's most fascinating people. Now, I didn't know that part, but I would actually put you in the kind of America's most fascinating people, just having interacted with you and been around you here and there, a bunch of things around the Super Bowl. So, well, tell me, how are things going? I mean, our conference, our summit that we're doing is really around relationships. And I know you've been in a relationship and thinking about marriage and things like that. So I want to hear a little bit about that. But also from an invisible disability standpoint, I also know that, 9 or so months ago, you were diagnosed with some autoimmune issues. So I think there's a conversation that really kind of takes us through everything, because what we're trying to do is, overcome stress and anxiety in the midst of this crazy time. So I don't know, how are things going? Just give me a little background on life and we'll dig in here a little bit.
Okay. So around January, so the past few years, I've dealt with some issues that felt like an invisible illness. I would go from doctor to doctor trying to figure this out. No one could tell me what was wrong. My lab work was borderline, something was wrong, but not enough to where a doctor could give me a diagnosis. But I just felt awful. I couldn't live my everyday life. I couldn't travel. Stress would affect me more so than it ever did before. And I was just searching for answers, searching for some sort of certainty. And eventually I caught some virus or got to where it was really bad in January and was stuck in bed for 2 months. And then in March, a few weeks before the lockdown, what timing, I was diagnosed with undifferentiated connective tissue disease after having lab work where my antibody levels were 5 times the normal amount. And they found lupus anticoagulants in my blood, as well as a few other conditions that mimicked either undifferentiated connective tissue disease, but they couldn't tell me exactly which autoimmune disease it was. And so I thought, okay, well, at least I now have a little bit of clarity. But I had never heard of this. I didn't know what an autoimmune condition was. I just knew that your immune system's confused and it starts attacking things it shouldn't. And as the United States is starting to lock down, it becomes a very stressful and uncertain time for especially people with chronic illnesses. And here I was just diagnosed. I'm already trying to figure out what this means for me having this condition, on top of now the uncertainty of the economy, the uncertainty of our world, the uncertainty of this virus, which scientists and doctors couldn't tell us much about. So I'm sitting at home trying to decide, okay, do I live my life or do I take extra precautions while I'm figuring this out? In the meantime, I have been in a relationship for a little over 3 years, and we were already discussing marriage. So then I thought maybe we should sideline that conversation for a little bit and just figure out all the health stuff. And we decided to quarantine together. On one hand, I don't know how, and maybe I'm not giving myself enough credit here, but I don't know how I mentally would have gotten through this time without the help and support of him and my family on FaceTime. And I reached out to a cognitive behavioral therapist and started working with her to figure out some of the autoimmune issues and the stressors that come along with that. And so it was very much a positive having him move into my space and quarantine with me. But on the other hand, over those months, I started to get very comfortable and dependent and reliant on him, which I had never been before with another human being. And I think that sometimes relationships work better when you have two very independent people, as opposed to there's a lot of that reliance on someone, because then he felt more pressure on, not only does she have this autoimmune disease, but now I have to be responsible for this. And is this something I'm ready for? Which we brought that conversation into the whole marriage thing. And is this something I'm going to want to deal with for the rest of my life? So our conversation started getting a lot more intense and covering a lot of concepts that we had not brought up before. So it exposed a lot of things, which on one hand made me realize that he is really the right person for me. But then on the other hand, I felt bad having these health problems and having to put them on someone that I care about. But at the same time, I really do believe that God has not created us to heal alone, that we're made to heal with a community of people. And whether that's through technology and FaceTime and finding a community of people that are struggling with the same invisible illnesses or chronic diseases, or that's calling up a friend. I think that during this time, we've realized just how important community is by either being stuck at home with our community, our families, or being home alone, having to reach out and find community in other ways.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my goodness. Talk about a basket full of stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
You don't have to apologize. Honestly, Lindsay, that stream of consciousness is literally what everybody is thinking these days, right? So we're all kind of like, oh my gosh, how do we even get through it? And then add to that some kind of hidden illness or invisible disability like you're talking about that pops up, and then a decision of, well, and what I think, talk about, I mean, it sounds like your conversations with your boyfriend really was that opportunity to separate the wheat from the chaff, right? I mean, talk about figuring out, is this guy, like, is he going to hang with me in the hard times? I mean, that's the good and the bad, the sickness and the health kind of thing. So yeah, how interesting. But stepping back, even hearing about how you initially found out about the things that you knew something was wrong, but nobody could tell you what, right? It's so common in this area for things like what you're dealing with to mimic other things, and then there's no diagnosis whatsoever, and nobody can figure it out. And so again, what you're living with at this point, and again, it forces you into this place of there's all kinds of changes that have to be made. I mean, lowering stress is the number one thing.
Yeah.
That's the number one. I mean, I had a friend of mine who said, hey, I really want to work for you because right now I work for Arthur Andersen. My stress level's off the chart, and she had MS.
Wow.
And so, and I don't know, I must be an easy guy to work for or something, right? So you said, well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. So yeah, lowering stress. it's also a change of diet. I mean, there's all these things that you have no idea that literally can make a huge difference. I mean, we dealt with that stuff. You know, our youngest daughter had a celiac type thing going on, and nobody could figure it out. And all same thing, all these symptoms, but nobody could figure it out at all. And at the time, she was you know, like a junior Olympic gymnast or something. Everybody's like, why is this kid losing weight? What's wrong? You know? And
Yeah.
I mean, but once you figure it out, it gets you on this path, but it doesn't change, like you said, the nervousness or the, boy, how you described it kind of as this, you, as an independent person, it's hard sometimes to share because you feel like you're putting a burden on somebody.
Yeah.
And so many times, and you're a good example too, because how many people would look at you and go, well, you look fine. I mean, holy cow, you're gorgeous and you're doing all this stuff and blah, 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 but you're not.
No.
You know, you're dealing with these major things. Like you said, you were down for 2 months when it first started. Holy cow. But
Yeah.
nobody probably knew that, right? I mean, how are you?
Well, I had lost about 15 pounds, which I'm already petite to begin with.
Yes,
So
you are.
And I've gained that 15 pounds back since, but my doctors, when I was walking in and they would try to do blood work and my veins would explode from all the inflammation. So they knew that, and thankfully I have had a lot of friends that have similar issues that didn't have those crazy antibody levels and didn't have the blood work to prove that something was wrong. And then eventually they find out they have Lyme disease or they have some other condition. So I'm so, in a sense, grateful that my body was sending off signals visually to people that something is wrong.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
that helped me a little bit. And also my boyfriend for the past few years has been around me, and he almost felt like, what's wrong with you? Like, you look fine, especially a few years ago when I was starting to first get symptoms, it was harder. And then eventually when we got the confirmation via blood work, he was like, okay, I get it. But it's almost sad that it took someone that I spend every day with having that blood work to validate there's something wrong with you. He couldn't just trust that, hey, I can't get out of bed today. I don't feel that great.
Yeah, people don't get it, right? I mean,
No.
I got to ask you a question. Is he right there?
No.
Oh, he's not? No, because you're kind of looking like, bring him in. Let's have, I mean, come on over. I haven't met him yet, so I'd love to meet him. That would be fun. If he shows up, man, just invite him to sit with you.
I will. I'll have to. He had to go to work today.
Oh dear.
So which again, we're starting to slowly get back into the real world and adapt and figure out what makes sense for us in terms of taking risks. And we still are around family, so we don't want to take too many risks that we jeopardize them. And we've been utilizing getting tested a lot. So hopefully that's accurate.
So tell me, I mean, you mentioned Lyme disease. Lyme disease is a big one where I mean, it just goes undiagnosed, and it creates all these different, I mean, people get migraines, they can have chronic pain, they can have, I mean, you have no idea. So how do you identify kind of what you're dealing with, and then what's your reaction, or how do you engage yourself of, I mean, you talked about the CBT, right? The behavioral therapy. Just kind of walk me through an episode happens, what's the process and how are you getting through that?
So I think it's very helpful now that I have a diagnosis, because I was able to, the first thing I did when I got this diagnosis was go online, research, find an online support group, ask people that had similar conditions. Hey, do you have friends I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. Do you know anyone in your life that also has one? And I was just reaching for any sort of information I could find. I found books on Amazon about the exact diagnosis I had that were from anecdotal accounts, and I would order them and read anything I could do to educate myself on this condition. I was reading everything. One of the positive things about then being in lockdown is that I started to have access to doctors that I normally wouldn't from all over the country, because people were doing virtual consultations.
Interesting.
And I found an autoimmune doctor that specialized in inflammation and illnesses around in this sort of realm, and reached out to them, told them what was going on. And they said, well, let me send you a bunch of labs. We'll run more labs on you. And then let me see if me and my team can help you. Fortunately, they were able to help me. They changed my diet. I would have had no idea what to eat if it weren't for them. And it was also, so that was extremely helpful, was finding doctors I could work with. But before the lockdown, when I was going from rheumatologist to who else, an infectious disease specialist, I mean, I saw every type of doctor there was. Every doctor gave me the same diagnosis, but a different game plan for it. I had traditional medicine doctors say to me, if you don't take these steroids and you don't take this medication, the wheels will fall off on this and you'll end up in the hospital for months. And then I had other doctors that had a more functional medicine approach that would say to me, you're fine if you take supplements, change your diet, change your lifestyle, limit stress. You don't need these steroids that are going to mess up your hormones. So I thought, oh my gosh, I have to make this decision. I have to figure this out before the wheels fall off. And now we've got this virus coming into the United States that's unpredictable. And it was very challenging to limit stress. Fortunately, when I did my research and would talk to different people, they would all encourage me to look into cognitive behavioral therapy. And I thought, okay, that's kind of strange. Why would I treat a physical condition?
I'm okay. What are you saying?
Yeah, yeah. You want me to treat a physical condition through therapy? Interesting. But at this point, I was open to anything. I felt so awful. And so I reached out to 2 different therapists I knew in the past, and they recommended a therapist in LA. And then I called them. One of the therapists was, God's timing is perfect. I'm just going to preface this with this. The one therapist was going on maternity leave, but she did have someone she recommended. And that's how I got to have the cognitive behavioral therapist I have now, was through just a line of events that happened. And I can't imagine having any other therapist other than her. She was such a perfect match for me and was able to help me. The one thing about cognitive behavioral therapy that's so helpful, that's also unique from other forms of therapy, is the fact that you go through these different exercises, and it's almost a teamwork type of thing. Whereas in traditional therapy, you're talking to a therapist, they're analyzing you, and then they're giving you suggestions. This is more a team building thing where your therapist says, hey, have you tried this technique? Has this been helpful? What about this technique? And here's your homework. They also give a lot of homework. So
Didn't I finish that a long time ago?
I know. But I found it really retrains your brain to deal with stress in a more positive way. Whereas before, I got to the place where I really do believe that inflammation levels and anxiety are linked. And the more inflamed I was, I mean, I got to where I was meditating and praying probably 35 times a day because my inflammation levels were through the roof. And I was so anxious. And then as I would do this therapy and also reduce my inflammation levels with the help of this other doctor, I noticed I started to gain control over this situation, which seemed almost hopeless a few months ago. And so basically my best advice that I've learned in the few months I've been experiencing this is be very open-minded, because you never know what could work for someone. And B, also, well, I've learned a lot about empathy, that you never truly know what somebody else is going through. And the more people I've talked to about having an autoimmune disease, the more I realize that so many other women are dealing with this and just go about their everyday lives and go to work, and nobody really knows how much of a struggle it is for them. And then I guess the third thing would be Whew. Yeah, cognitive behavioral therapy is really helpful and can help you retrain how you handle stress, because it's easy to tell someone don't stress out, but that's like telling someone don't think about cheesecake. You're going to think about cheesecake. It's almost
It's the
counterproductive.
only thing you'll think about as soon as you
Yep.
say it, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, I really do appreciate you sharing some of those things. These are the stories of how people are dealing with. So I appreciate your transparency and your honesty. It's interesting. There's a couple other media things that are out there. Last year at our gala, we gave the Media Impact Award to Jennifer Brea, and Jennifer did a project called Unrest. And it was a documentary where she was dealing with some things. I'm going to call it ME. The big word is huge, and I don't want to mess it up. But there's a lot of people that are dealing with, and same thing, very similar symptoms, in where she couldn't even get herself out of bed, and it made her feel kind of crazy, right? And different things that were going on. We're also working on another one with Kimberly Warner, is doing a project called Unfixed, and it's really a unique perspective on people living with different invisible disabilities, around the fact that, everybody's seeking a cure. And yet and again, from the unfixed community standpoint, it really is, I've had this so long, I really need to learn, how do I live in the new normal? I mean, it doesn't mean you stop seeking a cure, and you stop doing things that help you, like you're talking about, CBT and healthy eating, and just there's a whole host of things that can really bring everything down a notch. But recognizing how do I get through this new normal? And again, I know you're entrepreneurial level, and you're independent. I mean, you're just a go-getter. And so I think how does that affect you, kind of mentally, of just pressing into this to say, I don't like it, but I know I have to deal with it. How do I continue on? What's that look like? And I will say one more thing about that too, because I know you've mentioned it a few times. Not everybody has a faith or a belief in God. And, I don't want to push that on people. But when it comes up, that's an important component of it. And again, in a lot of these interactions, people have talked about it, because it's a big part. I mean, one of our folks said, I said, so you had all this stress, man. What do you do? He goes, dude, I pray, man, because I couldn't handle it myself. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know. Talk to me about that stuff.
I think it gets to a place where it's almost as if you're hitting rock bottom, and there really is no other option. For me, I had to stop working. The lockdown was a blessing in disguise, because I didn't have to quit my job, an entrepreneur elevator pitch. I didn't have to quit things that I would have had to at that time. I couldn't even get out of bed. And the brain fog that associated with it was hard for me to have an intellectual conversation. It was hard for my short-term memory was gone. It was hard for me to function. I mean, my goal when I would wake up working with this doctor was, how do I just function? How do I just get to where I'm able to walk around outside and not have immense inflammation and pain? And I was running these fevers for months and months on end. And so it was just, how do I control the physical symptoms? And over time, if I didn't have my relationship with God, I know I would have been extremely depressed, because I felt like God was stripping away everything in my life, from my career that I had worked hard on for a decade, to my relationship that I was now quarantined with this person that was saying, this might be the rest of your life. Is this something you want to handle? And it felt like I was losing everything I had worked hard for. But then it made me realize at the same time, and I think it was a really big life lesson for me, that I truly don't need many things in life if I have my relationship with Christ. And it really stripped me down to just that rare level. And one of my friends said to me, he said to me, you need to read the book of Job. because God took everything away from Job, and then eventually he got everything back and then some. And I kept reading that at the beginning of my diagnosis over and over and over, and praying, God, I just want to get to the end of this. But then eventually God obviously has his own timing, right? It's not on our timing. So as much as I could sit there and pray, like, God, teach me this lesson so that I can get to the end of Job where I get everything back, it made me realize I really don't need as many things as I thought I did. And especially during this time, I know a lot of people feel this way, that it's teaching us that we don't have to be in the office. We could spend more time with our families. And it's really teaching us what is important in life. And so the other thing that was really helpful to me is that everyone I had talked to that had some sort of chronic illness or invisible illness or autoimmune disease would say to me, you're going to look back on this time when you're figuring things out, and it was really a mental and physical struggle, and you're going to say, I'm so glad I went through this. And I thought, really? I'm going to say, I'm so glad I went through this? They said, yeah, you're going to say, I'm so glad I went through this, because you've been struggling with this for several years and you just didn't know it. And your health's going to be stronger than ever. Mentally, you're going to be stronger than ever. And you're just going to be in a much better place and grateful that you went through this tough time. And so that alone is what is getting me through this time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So.
The other thing I found that's really helpful is that at the beginning, like you said, I'm such a perfectionist and I have this entrepreneurial side to me and such a hard worker. I almost thought to myself, if I just research enough and I just figure out enough about this and just find the right doctors, like, I'll be able to heal faster. And I didn't really have enough grace and enough kindness towards my own body, especially when I was starting to gain weight again. I would say to myself, okay, when I hit this number and I've gained this much weight back, then I'll be healthy. Then I'll feel healthy. Whereas the doctor I'm working with now has this saying, he says, you can't heal a body you hate. So I had to learn grace and kindness to myself. And even if my body was healing at a slower rate than I wanted it to, I had to have grace and compassion for myself, which is hard when you see this burden you're putting on the people that you're with. And for me, the person I was quarantined with, and seeing how much of a struggle it would be when we would go for walks outside in the neighborhood and my feet would swell up and I was going to collapse. And so he'd have to carry me home, and not wanting to be that big of a burden on somebody, but at the same time realizing I have to have a little compassion. I couldn't even walk out the door and stand a few months ago, and realize that your body's going to heal, but you just have to be grateful for however long it takes to heal.
Yeah, your advice and the process and the way that you're looking at it is this journey-based thing. And while we like to say there's destinations of, if I can just get over X, then I'll be fine, it usually doesn't happen that way. And so, Lindsay, thank you just for, again, you're being honest and your insight, and, giving people a little look inside of what it's been like. I mean, I would call you, it's easy to look at you and say you've had a lot of success, and yet you're moving toward the things in life that are significant, and that really changes the way that you look at stuff. And sometimes these things bring us down. But yeah, just the fact that you're overcoming and willing to share about it, I think is pretty key. So thanks so much for doing that.
Well, thank you for having me. I know that the thing that's been most helpful for me is knowing that other people are going through this and reaching out and finding that community, because like I said, nobody wants to heal alone. I don't think the body's meant to heal alone. So I think that just, at least if you can find one other person that's going through something somewhat similar, it's probably the most helpful thing.
Well, again, Lindsay, thanks so much for hanging out with us. And we're so excited to have you as part of our Love Ideas Summit. Well, good talking to you.
Good talking to you too. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll talk later.
Okay, bye.
See ya.